Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think we're going to have a fabulous conversation because we were already chatting before we went on to start recording, and we could have just gone, blah, 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 we were just chatting, and not even realizing, oh, hold on a minute, we should be recording this. But today, my guest is somebody I have a huge amount of respect for. She sort of stays, for me anyway, she's this person that's a constant in the background, love seeing what she's doing, love all the barriers she's breaking and the taboos she's breaking down. And it's lovely to have you on board because I actually would love to learn more about you, what drives you. Sangeeta, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. um, please just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, and then we can kind of have a chat from there.
Hey, Meera, thank you so much for having me. And I know we've tried to do this a few times, but I am delighted to be here and to have this conversation with you, to echo what you just said. Like, I'm a huge admirer of your work, and I think you kind of are having some really, really critical conversations. Um, and I think some much needed conversations. And I'm so glad menopause is kind of in the limelight and everybody's talking about it. And I know you've been doing this work for a lot longer than kind of the media spotlight on menopause. Um, and yeah, I think I just wanted to say it's critical work, it's important work, it's
Thank you.
life-changing work for a lot of
Thank
women.
you. Yeah, thank you.
So carry on exactly as you are.
Thank you.
Um, so you asked me to introduce myself. So
Yes, please. Want to know
yeah,
more about
I'm
you.
Sangeeta Pillai. I describe myself as a South Asian feminist and activist, first of all. Um, and I'm a podcaster, I'm a writer, I'm a whole bunch of other things which we won't get into. Uh, but all the work I do comes from my own life and my own experiences and my own journey. Um, I grew up in a very traditional Indian family in Mumbai, we were very, very poor. And I was the first woman in my family to have a job, to go to university. And I had to fight a lot for a lot of the things that I wanted, from the clothes I wanted to wear to the friends I wanted to keep to not having an arranged marriage because they were trying to kind of get me married off when I was about 19, 20, I think. Um, and a lot of the fighting that I did, and I call it fighting because that's kind of what it felt like. It was like a battle. And traditional families, girls don't leave home. So I couldn't have got up and said, right, I'm going to go get a flat next in the next street. Like, it didn't work. So if you didn't get married, you kind of stay put. And eventually I got a job in another city, moved out, started to live my life, moved to the UK about 18 years ago. So I kind of straddle both of those cultures still. Part
Mm.
of me is Indian, part of me is British, part of me is I don't even know what else. Um, so that's a struggle, or not a struggle. It's a journey, I think.
Mm. Mm.
Um, and I'm what I call an accidental podcaster. So I about 5 years ago, I used to work in advertising for many, many years, and I had this big life crisis. And I think we should definitely talk about this because I think it's part of the menopausal journey now that I
Mm.
look back. And it made me kind of really reevaluate what I wanted the rest of my life to be. And it wasn't advertising anymore. So I kind of quit that, started these writing workshops for South Asian women because having fought so hard to have that voice, I wanted kind of other women to have the opportunity to have some of these conversations. So I did that for the first year. I think I ran about 20 workshops. And I was basically teaching South Asian women to write their stories about taboos.
Mm.
So all the work I do is about tackling taboos in our culture.
Yeah.
Um, and while on that journey of getting them to write down these stories, I was like, okay, these are really powerful stories, and more people need to hear them. So then I found a director and a producer, and I talked to Rich Mix, and we workshopped a theater show based on some of those narratives, and it was amazing.
Wow.
Like 100 odd people came,
Wow.
and I got all these hugs, and everybody said, "Oh my God, you're telling our stories, and thank you." And it was quite powerful.
Mm.
And then I was thinking, okay, this is really, really important. And I need to find a medium that allows me to reach even more people. Because theater was great, but it was a couple of hundred people at a time. And I
That's right.
wanted to reach more people. And that's kind of how podcasting came into my mind for the first time. Um, and I didn't know anything about podcasting. I was literally on Google saying, what is a podcast? I always say this to people. Like, I didn't know what a podcast was. How is it different to radio? You know, so I was one of those people because I am a lot older than the typical podcast listener.
Yeah, we both are,
We
believe me.
both
I'm
are.
even older. I really feel like an alien in this world. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is where serendipity happens, right? I was on Facebook or something one day, and someone just randomly sent me a message to say, "Hey, have you seen this competition?" And it was literally the last day, and I think it was ending at midnight, and they sent it to me at like 9 o'clock or something in the evening. And it was basically to pitch a podcast idea to Spotify. Spotify was running this kind of program called Sound Up to get more women of color podcasters. So I literally put a couple of sentences together, thinking, I'll never hear back from them. But I did. I got shortlisted.
Wow.
Out of 750 people that year in London, I was one of 10, got shortlisted, got put into this podcasting boot camp. And at the end of this, you had the opportunity, you got 5 minutes. We got 5 minutes to pitch to the head of BBC Audio, Apple Audio, Google Audio.
Wow.
Yeah. And I won. And that's kind of how Masala Podcast came
Oh,
to be.
yay!
So that, in a nutshell, is my
Oh
journey.
my gosh, that's where it all kind of exploded and went from there.
It did, it did,
That's
it did.
fantastic. Wow. I mean, I'm not surprised you won. Because if anybody has listened to your podcast or even follows you on Instagram and all the rest of it, your work is really poignant. Your work is really powerful. Um, and you don't hold back. You don't shy away from topics that are difficult. You don't shy away from challenging the norms that we have got to. We've just become complacent because we've been brain fed all this stuff, and it's really interesting. There's a couple of things actually that came out from the conversation just had, what you just explained. I mean,
Thank you
there's
so
so much.
much for all the things you said. I didn't want to interrupt you while you were in your flow.
No, 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 but it's just like that's fine. Keep interrupting. It's not a problem. It's a chat. It's a conversation. I think, for me, again, podcasts were, believe it or not, I didn't even listen to a podcast before I started mine. It was Harry, my husband listens to podcasts, my kids listen to them. They're like, yeah, yeah, we listen. I'm like, okay, what on earth is this? And actually, it really is Aria, who, you've met and who helps me and supports me, who really helped me to be able to bring that to light. And again, she's from a generation that my children's generation, so getting me to understand it. And I didn't understand the value of it. And I slowly, again, started to listen and then created my own, which is exactly what you sort of done. It's really interesting because your podcast becomes an extension of yourself in a way.
Yes,
It's so weird, it
yes,
becomes a little bit of you. So mine are quite
yes.
short, 30 minutes. Mine are kind of, on topics I'm interested in. Because, in a way, actually, I know this sounds terrible to those listeners, but actually, I'm really interested in meeting the people that I interview.
Mm.
I'm not kind of too bothered whether anybody else is, but I always think, well, actually, hang on, if you're investing the time to listen to a podcast that I'm hosting, then you're probably going to be interested in the same people I'm interested in and bringing that voice out. Going right back, if I can, you say you were the first woman in your family to have that education to do. That's huge. I mean, that honestly, for people who don't understand that is a really big thing, and it's probably something you do and take for granted. Being that first person to do this, the first person to do that, break that barrier, break that boundary. And I say this from a place of someone who actually is. If I look back over my life, I was always somebody being squeezed into a shape that I didn't fit. So, you fit into a square. You
Yeah,
you 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 just fit into, just
yeah.
please squeeze into the
Just
square, Meera,
do
because
it. Like, don't
just
ask
do
these
it. Why are
questions.
you questioning? Why do you
Yeah,
always have to rebel? I
yeah.
mean, really, why do you have to give us so much trouble all the time? Can you not
Yes,
just do what everybody
yes,
else does? And at the
yes,
time, you're like, what is wrong with me?
yes,
And it's not until
yes,
kind of, for me, it's now that I'm suddenly going. okay, maybe that's why I was, brought up or
Yeah,
born this way.
yeah, yeah.
But going back to you and your life, was there is there something that you can see that was a driving force for you? Was there a person, a thing, a feeling? What was it that drove you to break those
Oh,
boundaries, to do that?
I think about this and I get asked this a lot. And bizarrely, in like 1980s Mumbai, suburban Mumbai, where I grew up, like there was no feminism. Like
No.
we didn't know what that word was. Nobody had ever heard of it. There was no, we had like one channel on TV. There weren't any magazines. There was no Cosmo. There was none of this, right? So I've always thought like this fire that I have, and I think of it as a fire, is
Mm.
an internal one.
Yeah.
Like I was just born with this somehow. I don't know how or why. And I always knew. And I didn't have the courage until I was maybe about 13 to kind of voice it. But inside I was, like, I don't like this and I don't agree with this. And I don't. And then when started to suddenly say, okay, maybe I can say something about this, it came out.
Mm.
So I really feel like I was kind of born to do this, and I was
Yeah.
born to challenge and I was born to ask these uncomfortable questions and be the difficult one. When you said that, like I've heard that a million times. Why do you have to be so much trouble? Look at every other girl around you. Like,
If you're a South Asian listening to this, if this, this is familiar. If you're not a
yeah,
South Asian, sometimes
yeah,
it can be like, what do you mean? You're
yeah,
not kind of given
yeah,
that freedom to do what you
yeah,
want
yeah,
to
yeah.
do. Yeah.
And it's not even complicated things. Now that I think about it, like, come on, like the right to kind of cut your hair, the right to, I don't know, have a conversation with a boy. Like we're not talking boyfriends here, okay? We're just saying a boy who happens to be in the class with you or whatever, you know, to um to keep posts. Like my mother would go through all my letters and she would think it was her right to go through my letters, like, like basic stuff.
Mm,
And
mm, mm.
as a South Asian girl, like traditional, if you grew up in a traditional setup, like none of these things are yours.
No.
Your voice isn't yours, your clothes aren't yours, your hair isn't yours, your friends aren't yours. Everything's kind of monitored. And you are almost groomed from the time you are a baby to kind of become this wife, somebody's mother, somebody's something else. And you're never your
Never
own.
you. No, you're never you. And I think that's the reason we probably both do what we're doing, because
Mm,
it's that, it, it, for me, women's health, women's menopause in particular, but women's health, even periods, pregnancy, it's just not something that is acknowledged or talked about. And it's
mhm.
not, you know, you really do reach a point where people, even from the outside world, not just your family, are just saying to you, what are you talking about? Why are you doing this?
Yeah,
This is just not the right thing to do.
yeah.
And I love that you say that it's this internal thing, because a lot of people say to me, again, what is it that, why are you? And it's, yes, I've got a very, very forward thinking, really amazing role model of a mum. And my dad was super supportive all the time. And quite often, actually, people will say, well, it's probably because you were too liberal with her that she's turned out like this. And I'm just like, I
Turned
love
out
that. I
like
was like,
this.
honestly, it's
Like, what
crazy.
have you done exactly?
What have you done to her? What have you done to this girl? She's turned into this. But anyway, but for me, I did have those.
Yeah.
And it's only now really looking back and I think, wow, yes, you were those people that in a way facilitated it. But I think it's exactly what you said. It's that inner fire, that something is, that there is an injustice. And actually, interestingly enough, me as a child, young child, very, very shy and very, I couldn't ever answer back to a
Mm.
teacher or question what a teacher said, question anything. Somebody used to say, what, have you got any questions? I'd be like, no, whatever you said is absolutely fine. And it's interesting because that it's almost like
Yeah.
that suppression and then it just goes boom. But
Yeah.
the one thing we talked about was almost like this journey of menopause,
Yeah.
perimenopause, where it begins, and then menopause and postmenopause. That perimenopause almost seems to be that time that perfect storm kind of bubbling pot
Mm.
where if you've got anything that's going on that you've
Yeah,
missed, you suppressed, that whatever,
yeah, yeah,
it, it just is that time for creativity. It's what I've seen
yeah,
from
yeah,
so many
yeah,
of my guests.
yeah. Absolutely. So the way I think about it, and not to scare anybody who's not in the perimenopause, I think it's a good thing. Sorry, my camera seems to be going fading in and out.
Yeah,
But it's this time when whatever shit you haven't dealt with in your life,
yeah.
you better be ready because you're going to deal with it now.
On
It's
every
coming
level, on
on
every
every
level, from
level.
your brain to your
Yeah,
body. Literally, that's
body,
it.
anything that you've like, particularly, particularly emotional stuff. You're like,
Yes.
we're all, within South Asian culture and a lot of other cultures as well. Oh, don't think about it so much. It'll all be fine. Focus on something else. Are you feeling sad? Go get drunk. Are you feeling unhappy? Go buy a dress. Whatever, like this
Just put plaster on
psychological
it.
brainwashing that we're taught as a society, any society,
Yeah.
which means you just suppress a lot of stuff. And then you come to perimenopause, and that kind of I think of as like a layer on top, just
Mm.
goes. And
Mhm.
every feeling that you've ever felt is like raw and exposed to
Yeah.
the world. And then you're like, oh my Lord, like, what am I supposed to do with this, right? But the good news, I think, yes, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's not easy. But it's a real, I think of it as a real opportunity to fix your life because, where we are at, like in our 40s or, whenever you get to perimenopause, there's still most of our life left ahead
Yes.
of us. It's not like even maybe 60 years ago, 40 or 50 was old. Now it isn't. Look at all the stuff we're doing, right? So I think it's a real opportunity given to us to really fix stuff and then go into what's left of our lives. And a good, I think, many, many decades of a good, happy, fulfilled, active life for those of us who are lucky enough to have it, because I know
Yes.
not everybody is. So I think of it um, as a let's blow this shit up and then put you back together.
I love that.
And I'm not making like I went through it as well. What I was saying to you, like 5 years ago, I had a real like crisis. I was, working, I had a 25-year career in advertising and lots of big advertising agencies and senior roles. And I'd worked in India and I worked in Singapore and I worked in the UK. Great money and it was a lovely, stable, safe kind of career.
Yes. Yes.
And then along came this. Now I think of it, I think it was perimenopause, except I didn't know it was that at that point. And I had this massive, like, almost had a breakdown. Like, I just couldn't function. Um, and nothing worked anymore. And coming out of it, and there were some very dark days, very, very dark
Mm.
days. My mental health was really, really bad. I had really bad anxiety and I suffer from CPTSD as well. But it all came to the fore. And I had to really take stock and think, okay, so I've done this for 25 years. Is this what I want to do for the rest of another 25 years? And the
Mm.
very clear answer was no, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And it was terrifying because I'm like,
Yes.
okay,
That's your
Indian
security.
families and
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. And
like,
you
oh my
built your
God,
whole
and a
life.
poor and a
Yeah.
poor family as well. So there's even more insecurity around money. Like, oh my God, you're never going to have enough, you know. So it was a real scary but exhilarating time
Mm.
where I could rebuild myself into the person I wanted to be rather than
Mm.
a person I'd accidentally kind of become. Like you sort of become it,
Yes.
don't you? Like stuff happens, you apply for a job, you, I don't know, find a person, get married, whatever it is that you end up
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
And that's a real opportunity. And that was my moment, I think, as well.
Do you know what? It's just so amazing because I'm hoping, and I think in reality it will. Those listening, those who are listening to this, whatever stage they are in their menopause journey or in their health journey or whatever, you maybe not even there at that point yet, but to express the way you've expressed exactly what it is, literally, you've so eloquently put together this thing of that confusion, that sense of loss, that sense of fear, that sense of all of those things. But actually, then when you use the tools that you actually still do have, which is
Yeah.
that planning, that you've got from A to B. You've already got
Yeah.
from A to B.
Yeah.
You've done all the work. And
Yeah.
it's literally now unraveling all the bits, which is
Yeah.
very frightening because change is hard.
Yes.
But then putting those things into place, and sometimes it does take a little bit of time to
Yeah.
find where your slot is, where is it that you're at, but actually taking that plunge, which I get it. I know we may be talking, people may think we're talking from a place of privilege or whatever it is, but actually, if you are the sole breadwinner,
Hmm.
if your whole family's relying on
Yeah.
you, it isn't an easy decision.
I'm a
Um,
sole breadwinner. I'm single.
right,
I support myself. I have a mortgage. I have very
exactly.
high electricity bills, as we know.
Yes, yeah, well, as we all do. Exactly. It
Yeah.
is really, really hard to take that decision, but
Mm.
it's almost in a way, it's either taking that decision or you just end up having to take medication to medicate yourself to feel
Yeah.
better and just plod on with that life. And I think
Yeah.
that's what's more frightening.
Yeah. And here's the thing, I think a lot of people don't understand. That stuff that you're not dealing with, it doesn't go away just
No.
because you're not dealing with it. It's there.
No.
And it will come up in the form of mental health, physical
Yes.
health issues, like we are one being, the body,
Yes.
the mind, the spirit, it's all one. So if there's an issue in one, it will manifest in the other.
Oh,
So
100%. You see, I mean, this is it. This is, illness, sickness, disease,
yeah,
all of that. And when you're going through those stages of perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, you're actually more vulnerable
yeah,
because your body won't tolerate it either.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
the thing I see the most is that there is a breakdown. Your
yeah,
body starts to break down, whether you get things like fibromyalgia or you get things like,
yeah,
skin disorders or,
yeah,
or
yeah,
diabetes or even
yeah,
cancers.
yeah,
Your body just stops being able to
yeah,
deal with the stuff you haven't dealt with
yeah,
anymore. And
yeah,
it just goes, well, there you go, because I haven't got the resources to deal with it
yeah,
anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um, and I think that's what scares me more than the other side. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
that's why I'm striving so hard to make sure that I do as much as I can do
yeah,
that fulfills me.
yeah,
Um, but at the same time, as you said, kind of keeping that balance there.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
And also, I think for people listening, it doesn't have to be some big dramatic, let's quit
no.
our jobs and end our marriages and like walk into the sunset or whatever. It doesn't have to be like that. It's just a time to take stock, I think.
Mm,
Like this life that I'm living, is this the life that I want to be living? And that's it. And they can be calm, gentle, slow questions. And there doesn't need to be any big change if big changes are scary.
yeah,
But it's just nature's almost built in this mechanism to force us to take stock of our lives.
yeah,
And
yeah,
we owe it to ourselves to do it, I think.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think that's
totally.
pretty much what it is.
And you know what? That's so that you're echoing everything that I say to people when I speak to them, and at every opportunity that going in with this whole kind of right, I'm going to throw everything out and I'm going to just start again. For some, it works great.
Yeah,
That's how they roll. But for
yeah,
others, it's about those, like you said. For me, I talk about food and exercise. It's about going for a 5-minute walk or
yeah,
setting a timer for 1 minute to sit
yeah,
still,
yeah,
including one extra vegetable on your plate.
yeah,
Literally,
yeah,
that's
yeah,
where it starts,
yeah.
and then it
Baby
feels very
steps.
gentle.
Yeah,
Baby
yeah,
steps,
yeah.
absolutely. But I think, gosh, I could actually talk to you forever, Sangeeta. I don't think half an hour's enough. I think we should have had an hour for you, because you and I could have been here for absolutely ever. You've got such a wealth of knowledge to share to other people, with the audience and with others. And I'm sure we'll have to have you on again if you don't mind.
No, sure.
But I think, the thing for me, Sangeeta, what I'd like to know from you is during this period of turmoil and turbulence and creativity and all of that stuff going on, was there something, a ritual or something that you have since or during developed that you've really felt has helped you, kept you grounded, something that you could share with those listeners that kind of really helped you but may help others to be able to practice and think, right, this
Yeah,
kind of might be something I can do?
yeah. So there are a few kind of simple things that I've added on. And like you've said, it's not practical for everybody to have like, right, I'm going to do a 2 hour, whatever, climb up a mountain every Saturday. It may not happen, right? But the things that I found that really help is the walking. Like
Mm,
I walk almost every day. And I found that if I put that into my day, so I go into this co-working space, so I walk there sometimes, or I might walk back, and I add that into just the day rather than it's exercise, you know. Um, I've done that. You mentioned kind of veg. I've added a lot more. I've changed my diet quite a lot. Um, a lot of kind of, I used to eat a lot more kind of raw foods and things like that, salads and things like that. And I did this whole Ayurveda course where they told me this works for your body and this doesn't. I've
mm,
really learned what suits my body and what doesn't. So I've cut out a lot of things which I miss, but I feel like I want to take care of myself. I've cut out bread, I've cut out cheese, I've cut out dairy, a lot of things. And I know that I feel a lot better. And I've added a lot more kind of steamed vegetables and, things like that that they've
mm,
recommended.
mm.
Um, I try and do some sort of, I think of it as something between a meditation and a prayer. Like I sit
Yes.
down every morning for 10 minutes, light a couple of candles, and I just sit there. And it's like a grounding. It's a time for my mind to just be still. Sometimes it's too up and down and I can't get there, but it's fine. You know,
Yeah.
that's the third thing I do. And it really helps me
Yeah.
almost hear myself because I feel like sometimes we're so busy in our
Yes.
lives that we can't even hear ourselves.
No.
And it's when I sit down, I'm like, okay, that's how I'm feeling, or that's
Mm,
what's going on, or something, it's that
yeah.
time for calm.
Yeah.
Um, that's really helped. And I think, oh, maybe this is probably the most important for me. I don't know how it'll resonate with other people. Um, Self-compassion.
Yeah.
I am so hard on myself. I've always been. And I know a lot of women are. It's this
Yes.
patriarchal bullshit that we,
Yeah.
assimilate as we grow up. Like, you've got to do this and you've got to be that. And why
Oh,
aren't you this enough, that enough, whatever. So I've really, and it's been the hardest thing to do because I think that that voice is so hardwired in me to go, it's okay.
yeah.
You've done this. And I have to actually say it,
Yes.
like have a voice say that to me saying, but look, if I'll go, like I was quite ill this long weekend. I'm like, oh my God, I'm ill again. And then I have to say, hang on, Sangeeta, look at all the work you did the week before.
Right. Yeah.
You are allowed to have 2 days off watching trash TV when you're sick. It's okay. Like so it's almost that kind of voice of self-compassion that you have to become for yourself.
Yes.
And the second you do that, you notice that fizz kind of goes, it just dissipates.
Mm,
Ah, it's okay.
it's okay.
It's
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, I
So
think
these,
that's yeah. That all of the things you've said are so wonderful. I love that last one because I think again resonates very much with me. I will quite often say, "Oh, I'm just sitting down, but I have done da 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 da," da," and the kids and Harry just look at me and go, "Why are you telling us that?
yeah,
Just sit." I'm like, "Okay," but it's that thing of
yeah,
why are you
yeah,
sitting? What a waste of
yeah.
your life, you know.
Yes.
I think that's really, really, really useful and super, super important. Sangeeta, I have loved having you on the show. I could keep talking to you, as I said, forever because I don't even think we've touched the surface here. We'd love to delve a bit deeper. But what I would really like to do is to get our listeners to listen to your podcast, which is amazing. It really is. I absolutely love it. And I would love them to know where they can find you, where your podcast is. So please share and let us know.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Meera. So if you Google Masala Podcast, I will come up. So Masala Podcast is available on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, everywhere, anywhere that you get your podcasts. I should be there. And you could follow me at my website is soulsutras.co.uk. The Instagram is also Soul Sutras, SOULSUTRAS. I'm also on Twitter. I'm also on LinkedIn. Isn't everyone these days? Uh, so these are the places. So come say hello. Drop me a line. You'll find a contact form on my website if you want to say hello. And yeah, we should carry on these really important conversations. I think the work you
Totally,
do, Mira, is super important, and we've got to, yeah, have these conversations and use this as kind of the
yes.
fuel for the rest of whatever we want to do with our lives. I think
Yeah,
that's kind of what it is to be a
yeah.
feminist, I think, to find
Oh, I mean,
other
and
women
I
to
know,
support
you
us.
know, what's interesting as well is there's a lot of people will say, oh, but, you know, sometimes the word feminist can turn people off and think, oh,
Yes,
but actually
yes,
when you realize what that, you know, in essence actually means,
yes.
you know, because this is me, this is my story. You know, one of my cousins or my relative, my niece or somebody said to me, gosh, you know, you've got quite feminist kind of standpoint. I'm like, really? Have I? I don't mean to. That's not. And then it was just like, no, it's because you actually value women and women's
Mm,
place. And I think
mm,
what you do with your podcast and all the work you do to empower women,
yeah,
I think that's the synergy that we have. It's that's that empowerment.
absolutely,
Knowledge leads to
absolutely.
power, and power is where we can start. Knowledge and power together can help to
Yeah,
change the
absolutely.
dialogue, really.
Yes, let's change the world, Mira.
Yeah, change the dialogue. One person at
Yeah,
a time is
one
fine.
person at a time.
Oh, Sangeeta, thank you so much for being on.
Thank you
Like I
so
said, I
much
think
for
it's just
having me.
the tip of the iceberg for you. I'd love to have
Yeah.
you on again. I know we've shared your story, but I'd love now to just the next time, maybe we can just talk about things about how to change mindsets and how to
Mm.
really bring about what you do a little bit more in detail.
Yeah,
So hopefully we'll
absolutely.
come on again and we can do that.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much. This has been a real joy.
Thank you so much, Sangeeta. Bye bye.
Bye.